Christy and Alonso here with your monthly off the menu selection. Alonso lovingly, as always, curated a handful of films by Jean-Luc Godard for you to watch along with us. And you guys picked Breathless, which is like his classic, like the thing that announced him to the world. So that's a great place to start. I had not seen it in many years, so I was happy to rewatch it. Alonso, tell us what happens in this French New Wave classic.
Je voudrais construire Romeo et Juliette.
Oh la la.
Yeah, this is one of the great directorial debuts of all time, written by François Truffaut with some assistance from Claude Chabrol. So all of these guys would go on to really become among the major architects of the new wave. So Jean-Paul Belmondo, who was a rising star, but this movie really launched him into the firmament, plays Michel Poicard, who is a small-time hoodlum. I had forgotten until this viewing that he used to be a steward for Air France. I'd love to see that prequel. He steals a car and makes his way to Paris, and on the way, the cops try to pull him over. He shoots a motorcycle policeman and flees the scene, but the net is closing in. As he tries to sort of collect some old debts in Paris so that he can flee the country, he runs into Patricia, an American woman played by Jean Seberg, who he had a brief dalliance with and is hoping to talk her into going with him to Italy. She is not so sure because they barely know each other. They both slept with other people in the meantime, so it's not like there's a major romance going on. And, she's got other stuff of her own going on. And as the police get closer, whether or not they will make it away, is the center of the film. But really, it's a film about movies. It is dedicated to Monogram Pictures, which was a very low-budget American studio that cranked out kind of like very low-budget sort of gangster and Western movies. Belmondo's character is obsessed with Humphrey Bogart. He's constantly looking himself in the mirror. This is a movie that is about people looking at each other and being looked at. And it revolutionized cinema forever and still remains crazily cool.
It really is. And even when it's like trying too hard to be cool, as Michelle quite frequently does with the fedora and the ever-present cigarette and all that, it's so affected. This is so fun and just light and breezy. And a lot of the things that he did with this became so influential that they're just part of the language of film. They're part of the way you watch YouTube, right? Yeah. Jump cuts are totally normal. You don't have to have any kind of like cohesion from one moment to the next, like speed and energy are what matter. And that I think we can trace back to stuff like this. Oh, yeah. I think it might have been in Roger Ebert's classic films revisit of this film, that the jump cuts weren't necessarily a stylistic choice. It's just that like he thought some stuff was boring, so he would take his scissors and just like snip at the film, and that's where it happened to be. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to revolutionize pacing. Just, he's like, oh, this is too long. This is boring. I'm just going to cut it. But then in some places, clearly it's intentional. Like when we're in the back seat of the car and they're driving around in the convertible and we're looking over Patricia's left shoulder and she is static, but like what she's looking at keeps changing as he's talking. And that is clearly a use of that device that is intentional to create a feeling of energy.
In a way, he's kind of reteaching people to watch movies because, in the same way that in other forms of art, you see the sort of optical illusion things where your eye kind of fills in the space between this thing and that thing. The jump cuts we notice, but at the same time, we can glean what we came out of and what we're going into. And so, yeah, it is extraneous. We didn't need it. And so while that was, I'm sure, shocking to audiences in 1960, you're right. It is now just part of the visual language of movies and how we just, those of us who grew up post Breathless, like that's just how we grew up watching stuff and understanding that this is how you indicate movement from one place to the other without showing the movement from one place to the other.
Yeah. Besides, you mentioned all of the other new wave greats who are involved here. Jean-Pierre Melville is the guy that Patricia is interviewing.
Yes.
Who is flirting with her.
To become immortal and then die. Also, the guy who gets hit by the car is Eric Romer.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But I think, like, are there filmmakers today, let's think about this, who, like, they bring in all their friends and everyone's got a bit part in it? I mean, is there someone like Tarantino doesn't do that? Like, I guess
Judd Apatow in a way,
yeah,
I think.
Wes Anderson brings the same people back all the time.
Oh, fucking, Adam Sandler, really.
That's
I mean,
true.
if you think about it, he's always calling on an ensemble of folks. So yeah, there's a few people out there who do it. I want to recommend a couple of other I'm like, everybody should see this movie. It is like, and if you ever took a film class in college, you probably already did see it. But if you haven't, you should absolutely. But I want to recommend two other movies that kind of, I think, tie into it in an interesting way. First of all is Otto Preminger's Bonjour Tristesse, which Godard hired Jean Seberg for this role precisely because he really liked her in that movie. And he said that you could basically cut from the end of that film, put in a card that says 3 years later, and then cut to her in Breathless.
Oh.
So in a way, he sees Patricia as an extension of the very amoral character that she plays in Bonjour Tristesse. And then also I would recommend Mark Rappaport movie called From the Journals of Jean Seberg, in which he uses a lot of clips from her films, and then Mary Beth Hurt plays sort of Jean Seberg speaking from beyond the grave about her life, about her career, about her films. And it's this really fascinating evaluation of who she was in the movies and how filmmakers, employed her in films, how that mirrored things going on off screen. It's a very heady and rich movie, but it's one of my absolute favorites. And so after you've seen Breathless, it's a lot of fun to go into From the Journals of Jean Seberg.
I can't recall how we felt about the Kristen Stewart Seberg. Like, the clothes were great and she's good, but it felt superficial, I think.
The movie, I felt like, I think it hit a lot of biopic beats, but I thought that she was really good in terms of she didn't necessarily try to like she didn't impersonate her all of the way that she spoke, but man, there were camera angles where it was like she looked so much like her. It was jarring. And even if she didn't thoroughly impersonate Seberg, I think she really kind of caught a sense of who she was as a person. And so, yeah, I like the performance, not the movie so much.
Yeah. And so we talked about the jump cuts a lot with Godard, but also what I recognized this time around was there were a lot of long takes, like just the camera following them around, like walking and talking. And there's the one scene toward the end where they're in the other apartment and she tells him that she has called the police on him.
And she's walking in a circle.
And she's walking around, the camera's following her. Right. So there's a lot of momentum and tension and pacing that he builds that way as well. So I had forgotten that. I think about the editing and how signature that is for him, but he also would like just let us hang out with them while they're sitting in bed all day for giant stretches.
And it's weird, like and they talk about this From the Journals of Jean Seberg. I think a lot of people vaguely think about this movie and they think, oh, he's such a dashing romantic and she's such a bitch for, betraying him. But like his first line in the film is, I'm an asshole, and he's awful. Like he spends the movie being terrible to people, not just committing murder, but just like stealing from women. And like when Patricia says that she's pregnant and that it might be his, he says, oh, you should have been more careful. Like, I mean, he is an asshole. So and not that she's perfect either, but, I think it's tempting because he's so indelible in this role and he is such an icon of like, sexy, kind of brooding masculinity, we tend to forget that he's not the hero by any measure.
Oh no, and he keeps telling us that over and over again in like the way he talks about women, like Swedish women are as hot as I thought they were going to be.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, he's a misogynist, he's a thief, he's a murderer, but he looks great smoking a cigarette in black and white. So
absolutely, and he knows it, and he looks at himself doing it. The other thing I think that ties this movie together to Bonjour Tristesse is that Seberg looks at the camera. Which is not
like at the end. Yeah.
No, a couple times. Like when she talks about, they have that scene earlier where they're talking about, how when you sleep with someone that you're still by yourself, that you may go to bed together, but once you're asleep, you're alone. And at the end of that scene, she looks at there's a couple times in the film where she looks right at the camera, which is, not something that you would ever do back then. Like it was considered verboten, but like Preminger directed her to do so to sort of convey this kind of like moral blankness. And Godard is sort of constantly reminding us that this is a movie.
It's artifice, right?
Yeah.
It's knowing. Yeah, like the last shot of Nights of Cabiria is very famous for that too, of having Julieta Messina look at the camera and smile. But here it's all just vacant, like almost like daring you to believe all this.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Or what do you want from me? You know?
Anyway, this is a fun one to revisit. Let us know what you guys thought. If it was your first time seeing it, if you've seen it many times and found something different this time around, let us know. And then for November, Alonso, what do we have coming up?
So we're going to give you an option of about 5 or 6 movies that Christy and I have seen this year, but that we didn't review on this program for one reason or other. So that'll be heading your way at the beginning of November. And so we'll be talking about some of our favorite films from this year, but they maybe got really small releases or we caught up to them later and we just didn't get around to talking about them on Breakfast All Day. So y'all will pick and we will finally get around to reviewing it, before 2022 is out.
Great. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Thank you.